This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Raising Me. I'm Adrienne Stein, and this is where we dive into the highs and the lows and the confusing parts of parenting and turn to the experts for advice. Today's really not so much about helping our children through something as it is helping ourselves, because we're talking about parental burnout. As we all know, this can happen any time of year, though. Maybe you're starting to feel it creep in over the summer because it's supposed to be all sunshine and roses and pool days and all the things that we see on Instagram and Facebook and all the places. But so many of us are still working every day. We're rushing to get our kids to this camp or that one, trying to keep calendars full until the school year starts. And then, of course, you blink and it's back to school and all the things that go along with getting the kids ready to go back, when all you want to do is sit by a pool or on a beach sipping a margarita. Just me? I don't think so. Anyway, the burnout, it is so real regardless of why or when it is happening. And it can look like fatigue, short temper, emotionally shutting down, just to name a few of the signs. And instead of simply trying to power through like so many of us do, we have got an expert to help us through it in better, healthier, more productive ways. And we're also learning about healthy emotional regulation when it comes to burnout. Ayanna Allen is a certified parenting coach at Go Hard Parenting. She also has her degree in human development with a focus on early childhood development. By the way, she is a mom of a teen and a little one, so she is in the thick of this too. Ayanna is going to share some pro strategies to help ourselves and ultimately our family when we're feeling parental burnout. Check it out. Ayanna, thank you so much for joining us again. For any of our listeners who haven't heard of your prior episode, just tell us a little bit about what a parenting coach does. How'd you get into that?
Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be back. It really started with pregnancy and birth of my second daughter. A really close friend of mine, I call her my sister. She was also pregnant with her second child. And we were trying to figure out how we were in the stage. I feel like in your 30s is when you're like, how do I grow? You know, you start looking at the self-help books and you just start looking at like bigger meanings and purpose and all that. So we were already into that, but we wanted to figure out like how we would show up to our first child and to our second child that was coming in. And so we decided that we would just start reading a bunch of books, diving in. We shared a lot of that information with friends. We started a very informal moms group. So that was great. And then that was right before COVID. And so when COVID hit, that kind of like the group dispersed, but I was still really interested in the topic and just as a parent myself, still growing, still learning. And I love sharing what I learned to people who want to know. So I decided to go and get my parent coaching certification to support mothers and fathers and caretakers who are struggling with how to show up for their children in a way that they could sleep at night, that they could feel better about themselves and that they're really fully connected to their child. So ultimately what I do is I try to help parents identify what their struggles are and get into like deeply rooted information like, okay, well, where did this come about? And ultimately just try to help them work through and give them some tools and that they can see the evidence of the work that they're putting in with their relationship with their child.
I mean, it's a lot of self-reflection. And I know that part of that and part of helping parents take care of themselves is really addressing what it feels a little bit like a buzzword or a buzz phrase right now, this idea of parental burnout. But the struggle, it is real. I mean, every parent, if they are honest with themselves and others, has felt burnout at some point in their parenting journey. So for those who may not be familiar or maybe haven't identified those feelings, Could you explain what parental burnout is exactly?
Sure. I mean, I think it's a myriad of things, but to keep it simple and just to tell you the main thing, it's really when we have taken care of our children before we've taken care of ourselves. But I also think we're socialized to believe that, especially mothers, to believe that we are to be selfless and we're supposed to take care of our kids, take care of our children before ourselves, sacrifice everything. And while there is some honor in that and some truth in that, right? I think that we go a little bit extreme and we take the focus so much off of ourselves and pour so much into our children, we really don't have anything left. And so that's actually a disservice to our children. And we don't talk enough about that.
Well, that's why we're here. You do so often as parents just try to be everything for everyone and hold it all together while doing all of the things.
That's right.
When you're talking to parents, like what are some of the common signs and symptoms of parental burnout that, we should be aware of?
Well, symptoms include the obvious fatigue, and oftentimes when your fuse is short. So when you have a short temper, when you feel like you are just on edge, your patience is really low. On the other side too, it's like when you're just like, yes, take whatever you want. Just go
Yeah.
somewhere. Just whatever. You want candy
Whatever.
for
It's
breakfast?
fine.
Get out of my
Yeah.
face. Yeah. So those are a few symptoms that can let you know that there's some burnout there.
Yeah, it is different than general like feelings of stress or fatigue, right? I mean, it's like those are
Yes,
some
because
signs. Yeah.
those are signs, but I think more or less you're not really connected to your child. They could feel that.
Mm,
And so it's almost like you're on autopilot. Like,
yeah. Like
especially if
the
you know
shutting
the
down
things.
feeling.
Yeah, it's a shutting down feeling, and it's like when you're driving to your job, which you drive that route every day, and so you could be thinking about a million other things, and then before you know it, you're in the parking lot of your job, and you're like, I don't even remember driving here. Like, it's kind of how that's a
Yes.
symptom. It's like you are so checked out. You're doing all the things. You're cooking. You're bathing. You're prepping for bed. You're cleaning. You're doing all the things, but it's like you're checked out. You're not really there. And so you're not getting the full engagement with yourself or with your family.
So so what are some of the most common causes, or contributors to parental burnout? We talk about the idea that, we do try to be everything for everyone so often, but are there, can we get more granular on that? Are there specific things or specific examples?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest cause is us. I think we're the
Well,
cause.
fair.
And we can point the finger. We could say, oh, well, when this happens or when this happens. So, I mean, we could state the obvious, which is when work is crazy, when you have all the kids are involved in all the different activities. And so now you're obligated to deliver them to all these different places. Maybe poor planning at home if you weren't like organized or ready to cook or have like a meal plan or something like that. All the things that add unnecessary stress. But that's so much easier said than done. I
It
mean, I still
is.
struggle with it. We all still do it. So it's not like, oh, everything's got to be seamless and perfect. But the reason why I started answering that question with, well, it's us, is because we decide what we're going to give to people. We make that choice. And we make that choice based on our own experiences and our own values. And a lot of times we say we value something, but our behavior doesn't always match that. And so we do show up with being everything for everybody except for ourselves. But there's a problem with that. You have to decide, like, this is where I'm going to invest because we do have a finite amount of energy. We do have a finite amount of time in the bigger picture sense. So, for example, I'm not going to do for everybody the way that I would do for my family. I'm going to do something. That doesn't mean either or. It's not black or white. It doesn't mean I have to be extreme and be rude but if I'm clear about my value and I'm clear about what I am willing to give, then I will give it. But if we don't have that conversation with ourselves, if we don't reflect on that, and that even means with our children. I mean, we want to do, I want to do everything for my children.
Mhm.
But when I am exhausted, I'm making a conscious decision to stretch my exhaustion to meet the need or the want for my child. They might just want to go to a store, and I'm making a conscious decision. So I have to be okay with that. But if I'm just blaming everybody, well, everybody always wants me to do stuff. Yeah, but are you doing it? If you're doing it, then of course they're going to want you to do it because they know you're going to do it.
Well, then if you are doing, because I can tell you so many times where it's like I do feel like guilty because I've been at work all day and then the kids want to do something after work or go to the store and you feel, like I have no energy for this. But on the flip side, like, but I really should. I feel like I should. It is such a difficult balance. I think particularly for working moms and dads and caregivers, no matter what that role looks like. But what I'm hearing is sort of allowing yourself to say no. So can we have like a conversation with the people pleasers for a moment? Like,
Yes,
as
because I
a
am one of them.
people pleaser, like, how do you find that balance and learn to put up those boundaries? We hear all the time that we need these boundaries, but to actually enact them is sometimes a different story. So help us, help the people pleasers of the world.
Sure, sure. And I can absolutely relate to that. That's still a part of my journey. I've gotten stronger. All I can say is that, you take small steps for the bigger vision, and you really just continue to work on yourself and you forgive yourself constantly with still making the efforts towards getting better. So, what you said has some validity to it, of course. You're working all day, you come home, your kids want to play, you're exhausted. What do you do in that situation? Now, I'm in no way saying that you tell your child, nope, I don't want to play with
Yeah,
you. I'm
bye.
exhausted. Get out of my face. Like, I'm not saying that at
No.
all. But I think that we have an expectation that when we get home, our children will be there and they'll be waiting for us. And if they're at that sweet spot age where they still want to be around us, they're going to want to play with us. So, what do we do to prepare for that? So, and I mean, it's going to look different depending on your lifestyle, depending on your work obligations, things like that. But I think that the more space that we give ourselves in between things, so for example, transitions, the more likely we can ease into the next responsibility where it feels more like a responsibility and less like an obligation.
Mm.
So, for example, I go into the office, I'm exhausted. Okay, but I have space to maybe give myself like 30 minutes in between the time that I left from work and the time that I step into the door. Even if it's just 5 minutes, some deep breathing. Because what happens is we end up serving people so much that we're just depleted and we don't even see ourselves. So I'm not saying that we have to create a spa day every day or we have to do anything really extravagant, but a lot of us don't even spend a few minutes
Hmm.
to check in with ourselves, even if it's first thing in the morning. You see all these videos like on social media where parents are like up scrolling late at night because they finally got a minute to themselves. While I do that. I
Guilty.
watch
Yeah, sure.
Netflix. I do all the things.
Same.
But on a good day, I'm turning the lights down low. I'm turning on my what do you call that? The diffuser.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
a
Yeah.
nice smell. And I'm like maybe doing a little bit of reading, or I'm praying, or I'm like doing something that's more meditative. And then that improves my sleep. And then when I wake up, I don't feel so exhausted and rushed. And then if I am running late, I'm okay with that. I'm accepting of that. I'm not anxious about it, or I'm working on not being so anxious about it. I know that you brought up people pleasing, and that is something I'm very familiar with. And I know for me and for many people, people pleasing is something that really stems from what kind of interactions you had with your caretakers when you were younger,
Mm.
because they help you to develop how you're supposed to show up in the world. And there were messages that were given to us that tell us that we have to show up to everybody everywhere because how they feel is our responsibility. So a lot of it then goes back onto the work that we do for ourselves, but we have to create that space because it's like a vicious cycle, right? We're people pleasers. So we're just taking care of everybody. So therefore we're not creating space for ourselves to reflect on why we're people pleasing. So we're still people pleasing. So it's like
Right.
this
It's like
revolving thing.
cyclical. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really just requires a lot of courage, I think, and a conversation with yourself or with a loved one who can help pull you up from that. So as a coach, I help with that. But you can go to a friend who's an advocate for you to spend some time with yourself and say, no, you don't have to. She's 10 years old. She can make her own toast.
Right.
You just go sit down somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I even have my teenage daughter sometimes remind me that I don't have to do everything for my 6-year-old.
Oh,
So my 14-year-old will remind me to go lay down.
I love that. You
She'll
are
just
teaching
say, go
that girl
sit
right.
down.
Yeah.
But I'm also, I'm listening and I let her speak, even if I don't always like what she has to say. So in those moments, it benefits me. But again, this is just kind of a side note. If you're always chastising your child on how they should be talking to you, they're not going to say
Mm.
anything to you. But in that moment, my daughter felt like she had authority. And so she's like, hey, mom, like, what are you doing? Go sit down. And I'm like, you're right. I'm going to go sit down. So
Yeah.
having people in your life who can help you get out of that mode
Yeah.
is really helpful for people pleasers, because you have to really decide and figure out, like, how did I get here? Not because you need to blame anybody, but because that is what's going to help you figure out how to get out.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
If
It
that
is,
makes sense.
makes total sense. And, what I'm hearing also is that it's okay to take little steps when it comes to reversing parental burnout or trying to avoid parental burnout. We don't need to, solve this today. It's part of the parenting journey. One thing that also came to mind is you're talking about just taking a few minutes, whether it's that drive home. I set my alarm 30 minutes early so that I can sit outside with a cup of coffee without anybody talking to me. And it is like my favorite part of the day. And today, for instance, I didn't hear my alarm, which is crazy. I almost always do or wake up before the alarm. And I woke up 30 minutes later than normal. And my whole morning, I felt off because I didn't have that time on the porch, just sitting and being in peace and quiet and just enjoying something so simple by myself.
I love that you said that because, I think before we started recording, we were talking about like the workout routine and how we just
Yeah.
a lot of us don't feel like doing it. And then when we do it, we feel good about it. That's kind of a similar situation.
Right.
I mean, you're in bed and you're like, I don't want to get up. And you could sleep that extra 30 minutes. But because you pushed yourself into understanding, like, this actually changes the trajectory of my day in a positive way, you're going to show it better because you fed yourself first.
Yeah.
So
I
you're
mean,
more pleasant. You're more
I
patient.
actually, I look forward to it every day. I look forward to the next day and my morning cup of coffee on the
Nice.
porch. So anyway, part of something that goes hand in hand, I think, with parental burnout is this idea of emotional regulation, which I also feel is kind of like a buzzy kind of phrase now. But what exactly is emotional regulation, and why is it so important for parents to understand what it is?
I'll start by saying what emotional regulation is not. It is not suppressing your feelings.
Hmm.
It's
And
really
that's
what it
really
is.
key to understand in all of this.
It is because I think when people think about emotional regulation, it's like a calm state, but it's like you're not expressing yourself or acknowledging yourself. So emotional regulation is actually quite that. It is recognizing how you feel, giving yourself space to process it, giving yourself space to accept it, and then giving yourself space to decide what you're going to do with that emotion, how
So
you're
in
going to
some
respond.
and in some ways that could help even mitigate parental burnout.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
How
Because when
so?
you,
Yeah.
well, because when you're in tune with how you feel emotionally, it prevents you from going down a rabbit hole of exhaustion. It prevents you from, if you are able to recognize the first symptom, the first sign that you need to take care of yourself, or you need to rest, or you need to say no, or you need to say yes, when you're in tune with that. So that's really what emotional regulation is. It's about giving yourself and your brain oxygen, giving yourself space to breathe and really feel what you're feeling so that you don't put that on someone else. Because when you're emotionally irregulated, you're trying to put your emotions on someone else. So similar to a child who's having a meltdown, they're emotionally irregulated. They have all these big feelings and they're pushing them out because they don't know what to do. So they're just like throwing it all over. Somebody else take it. Please, somebody else take it.
Mhm.
When you're regulated, you're owning your feeling. You're understanding that it's your feeling to feel, not anyone else's responsibility. Then you can accept it. And then you can move towards what you can do to problem solve. Because otherwise, you're just a victim. You can blame someone else for how you feel, and you're no longer in control on changing how you feel.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And are there specific techniques or exercises that we as parents can do to help, practice or stay emotionally balanced?
Yeah. So the easiest thing I think for anybody to do, also the one I think that is often overlooked and most forgotten, is deep breathing.
Hmm.
And even people might think that that might be a little bit cheesy, but I found that it is very helpful for me. It has, people start, they say, "Oh, I wish I were as patient as you." It's like, I wasn't born this patient.
It takes
Maybe I
work.
was, but it takes work. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I've definitely lived a life that has been based on urgency and impatience and judgment and all the things. And the deep breathing really just gives me a pause before response. So it's not that I'm not angry. It's not that I'm not sad. It's not that I'm not afraid. It's that I've accepted that those are the states that I'm in, and I'm responsible for feeling that, and therefore I'm in power controlling it or changing the situation or removing myself from the situation, but I have the power to do that. And so deep breathing really gives me that space, because oftentimes when someone does something, particularly our child, when they're doing something that makes us afraid, angry, whatever, we instantly want to go off. We instantly want to blame them. Why did you do that? Why did you? We're blaming them. But when you stop before you do whatever or say whatever and you breathe, then you realize that number one, maybe it's probably not as bad as you think. Two, there's something else that's bothering you that even got you to that level to be upset because they dropped the glass. And two, it gives you a space to ask questions, like real questions to your child, rather than chastise them or shame them.
I want to kind of flip the coin too, because what about if you have a child or a partner who struggles with emotional regulation? How can you support the people that you love in your life if you identify some of these things with?
Great question. That's probably one of the harder things for people to do, but I'll say it anyway. because it's possible, is to work on yourself,
Mm.
work on your own emotional regulation. Modeling is the most powerful way to teach. It's not what you say, it's what you do. And yes, you can add some things. You can ask your partner questions. Well, what made you do that? Or what did you but if they're already not in a regulated space, then they might be defensive. And so a lot of it is just showing them. And I've actually learned a lot just by watching other people and how they respond to situations. And when it's admirable, I'm like, I want to try that. But also when it's ugly, I'm like, "Ooh, is that
No
what I look like?"
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
So
thanks.
you're yeah, so you're but
But that's
being
modeling,
self-aware,
right?
that
Yeah.
it's all modeling. It's all
Hmm.
modeling. When your child is emotionally irregulated, the best way to get them to regulation is to let them borrow some of your calm. You need to borrow some of your calm.
Mm.
And the way that they do that is you show up to them calm. And you do that by breathing deep. You might need to go outside and get some fresh air really quick and just tell yourself that you are there to guide them and it's gonna be okay.
Gonna be
And
okay.
and be that nurturing space for your child to say, yeah, you feel this way, validate their feelings, let them get it out the way they want to get it out without you matching their irregulation. So you want to pull them up. You don't want them to pull you down.
Right. It all works together, and again, going back to just the parental burnout, I also, what comes to mind is just this idea that it takes a village to raise a child. So, can we talk just a little bit about what role like support systems, partners, family, friends and community really play in helping to prevent parental burnout?
Yes. And I do love that term. It takes a village to raise a child. And I'll just add my own twist on it. It takes the right village.
Yeah,
It takes the healthy
totally.
village
Absolutely.
to raise the
Yep,
child.
you are so
And
right.
so it takes them supporting you, you supporting them, with whether it's with your children or wherever it is that you can fit some space into. Okay, so I'll just give you a real life example of this. So, a really good friend of mine has a job that wasn't so demanding and now it's very demanding. A young child, an older child that's going through some things, and it just feels like chaos in her life. She's really near and dear to me. We're always helping each other out with our children. I'll take her, her girl, she'll take mine. And so we really help switch off and give each other space in that way. And she's always very welcoming and she cooks all the time. She's a do all for everybody kind of woman. So now she's all burnt out. So she's working on that. She's aware that she's doing that. So she's like, so she's gotten better over the years. So she's just like, I'm setting this boundary. And the more she practices it, the better she gets at saying no and all the things. But more recently, she's just been like all frazzled. Now, I'm not a neat freak, but I enjoy organizing. I enjoy moving things around. I enjoy purging and getting rid of things that I don't use. I like practicality in my home. I like some fun stuff in my home too. But I notice when I go to her house, there's like stuff everywhere. I don't I don't love to cook. I don't love to, I don't know. This is like in the common ways that you would see someone support someone else. I don't necessarily fit that mold, or at least I don't see myself. But this is one way that I can support her. So I said, hey, you got all these things that are going on in your life. I bet that if I came and I helped you organize just pieces of your home, that you would have some clarity when you came home. Because when you come home and the house is crazy, you're going to feel that stress. And so she's like, yes. I'm like, okay. Now, me being me, I'm like, let's put it on the calendar. Let's come in. I'll come in on Friday, and we'll just spend an hour. It doesn't have to be an all day thing.
Right.
So I come in, I spend an hour, and we just work on her porch and her foyer. That's it. Because I'm like, we're gonna work through the house, but we're gonna work in chunks. The reviews from her family, her youngest daughter, they're just so excited about this one little thing that to me was little, but to her was life changing.
Mm.
So now on her own, she's working on her dining room. I mean, but you can see her now, her light, she has a lightness about her. And so it didn't take for me to, even though I do watch our kids, it didn't take that. It just took for me to see somewhere that I could feel a purpose for her. And it didn't look like everybody else's way. It looked like my way. This is what I can do. And so that's a part of the village. Now, on the flip side, I do not like to cook. I cook out of necessity. So I will buy food and she'll cook it for me. That's a village.
Yes.
That's a village. But you have to be okay with what you don't do. You have to be able to recognize what you offer and then reciprocate, barter. That to me is a healthy village.
And these aren't like big, grand, huge gestures. They're very simple, small steps that help in such big ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing is I'm seeing her
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not judging her.
Which is the
I'm not,
key, right?
yeah, I'm not judging her. My house looks crazy sometimes. I'm definitely not judging her, but I'm seeing her and I'm seeing a need. And I'm like, hey, I can't help you with your job. I can't help you with some of these other things that you're going through, but I could come over and I can help you organize. I can help you purge some of the stuff that you've been saying you're going to do forever and you haven't done it yet. Cause she's been talking about it for a while. And I finally stepped up and I said, I could fit into this, but I offered it to her. That's a village.
I don't know if you make house calls to me, but I have some rooms that could use some organizing. Ayanna, if there was one takeaway for our listeners when it comes to parental burnout, emotional regulation, what would that be?
I think I said this in the last episode, and I'm going to probably say it in every episode. But practice and self-compassion are big. You're not going to get it all in one day. And that's what life is. But if you can notice when you told someone no or told yourself yes more in this day than in the last, then celebrate that.
Small steps, big difference.
Yeah.
And so much of it does go back to just empathy for yourself and understand we are all doing the best we can,
That's
and
all we can do. That's right.
some days it looks better than others, but
That's right.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Oh, well, for any of our people who are actually watching, well, beautiful little kitty cat just crawled up onto Ayanna's lap.
Yeah,
Oh my
this
gosh,
is
she's
Toulouse.
beautiful.
Thank you.
All right.
I mean,
Well,
I
we
didn't
will
give
have
birth to
more.
him, but thanks.
The what?
I said I didn't give birth to him, but thanks.
Oh. Oh my goodness. Well, we will have more resources on our website, wgme.com/raisingme, and of course in the show notes. Ayanna, as always, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I gotta tell you, I love connecting with Ayanna. She is so cool. And a big takeaway for me is that you just simply cannot be everything to everyone all the time. And I know we have heard that ad nauseum, but let's be real, because so often it goes in one ear, right out the other, and we go jumping on that hamster wheel and keep on running. So I'm trying to do better with practicing that self-compassion that she talks about, and remember that it is okay to say no, even to the people that you love the most in the world, really in order to be better for them and yourself. It sounds so simple, so not necessarily easy, but it is necessary to help prevent that burnout. And just one exclamation point on that emotional regulation piece. It is not suppressing feelings. Like, I just wanted to underline that. It is recognizing feelings, accepting them, even the ugly ones, and just allowing yourself space and grace in order to respond in healthier, often, if not always, more productive ways. So I'm just so grateful to connect to Ayanna, and I'm grateful for you for joining us for the conversation on raising me. I'm Adrienne Stein. This episode is edited by Megan Littlefield and produced with Nate Eldridge. Please follow Raising Me wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, consider a positive rating and review if you found anything that was helpful in this episode. We certainly appreciate that. Wherever you are, I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.